and welcome to the latest episode of Chat OMP, where I, William Peake, the Global Managing Partner of Harneys, speak to our various office managing partners around the region. I am delighted to be joined by Rachel Graham from our London office. Rachel, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, William.
Excellent. The last time I saw Rachel, she had some unvarnished views in relation to my green seersucker suit, which I decided to wear into the office,
A
which was a
brown one, I think.
no, was it brown? No, I thought it was green. So
Can't
many to
remember.
choose from.
Can't,
So many to choose
can't
from,
remember.
Rachel. So many to choose from. So for the second series, we're being slightly more unscripted, and you and I obviously know each other really well. You've been in the role for nearly 3 years now, and I just thought it'd be really interesting to get you to speak to how do you carve up your time between being London's resident BVI transactional expert with being the London office managing partner and also being a working parent, because you talk about that a lot internally, and I always learn a lot from it. And I thought that our listeners might do so too. So I'm going to chuck it open with that.
Sure. I think it's been a really, really interesting past 3 years for Harneys London. And I think one of the biggest challenges, as you alluded to, is kind of wearing the multiple hats that
Mm.
I wear as a OMP. And it's sort of three different areas that I actually feel really quite passionate about. I really enjoy the management side of the role, not just managing, mentoring other lawyers, but just really having the opportunity to reach out and talk to all the different people that we have in our office in London. We have such a variety of people. We're not just the law firm. We have a very big base function. So our court function is in London, and I spend a lot of time talking with our finance people, our BD people, and HR people. So I think you get a really fascinating insight as to how the office and the firm itself operates.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of scratches that itch that I have.
How do you itch a scratch? That's for the next
I'm not
episode.
sure. I'm sure there's a way. I'm sure there's a way. Probably involves one of those wooden handle things that you shove down your back. But I think that's really interesting. And then also on the being a lawyer side, I still love being a lawyer. I miss doing that all the time, but I love the role that you develop as you become more senior, where you get to encourage and help more junior lawyers develop and become experts in their field. And you give them the benefit of being able to forge their own path, grow their own way, but within some quite supportive parameters to make sure that they don't feel like they're trying to make decisions that they don't feel comfortable with, but also you give them another set of eyes on something that they're doing and a different viewpoint.
How would you describe your style of, are you very hands-on? Do you know when it's time to let somebody, for example, make their own mistakes and learn from them? What's your approach to that?
I think it's changed over the years. I used to be one of those awful micromanagers, as I think most lawyers probably are.
I think you're right.
To start with. But I've really learned that you have to trust people. You have to let them make mistakes, but with you as the safety net, with you as the person ultimately taking responsibility. And I think the way to do that is to allow someone to run with a project, run with a task, but make sure before they hit send that you've had a conversation with them, that you're on the same page and that kind of thing. It's a really difficult balance to get, I think, because, I think people are quite fearful of something not being exactly right.
Well, that's just in their DNA, isn't it?
Exactly. I love the fact that if I ask one of my colleagues or one of the team members to do something and they come up with stuff that I've never even heard of or never even thought of, I think that's massively rewarding, because rather than sort of feeling like, oh, I should know this and I must protect myself from looking stupid, I think it's amazing. I love it.
That's a very regular occurrence for me, I must confess.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I think it is difficult because you have to play it by the characteristics of the people in your team.
It's definitely not a one size fits all.
Fits
And
all.
I think the answer lies in your first observation that it's for the person you're dealing with to know that the buck stops with Rachel, the buck stops with William, etc.
Exactly. I mean, that's our job as
Yeah.
partners. We are there for the client to get annoyed with if there's something wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we'd all rather not have those awkward conversations, but it's absolutely not the place of the junior to be on the firing end of that. So I think that's the first two. The third one, sort of juggling family as well. That's something that I also quite enjoy. It's quite rewarding to get through your week and realize you've dealt with, you know, today I've got one of my children at home who's not well.
Doing some drafting in the background, turning around some docs.
Doing some drafting, exactly. My husband's gone away for business, so the next 3 days are, you know, mum is in charge of
Mhm,
everything.
mhm,
So
mhm.
that's always quite interesting. I've done this role, been a mum for, you know, 12, 13 years now.
Mhm.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest advice I would ever give to anybody who was interested in my opinion is don't worry if you don't always get it right. You won't. Sometimes the family side will win, sometimes work
Yeah.
will win, sometimes you personally will. You know, it's just getting a balance that you're comfortable with. I think that's important.
It's really interesting, I think, when I chat to working parents who are lawyers, because it all goes back to that perfectionism point. Once you accept that perfect is the enemy of good, especially with juggling parenting, you start to make some real strides.
I think so. And I think you begin to just give yourself realistic expectations of what you
Yeah.
can achieve. And I think that really is the starting point of everybody winning.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose just to kind of wrap up around London itself, I mean, London feels really busy at the moment, and certainly in the offshore space, it does just feel like a real hub right now in terms of the amount of instructions, etc. And I know how busy you are on the transactional side. What's going on?
The advantage that we have in London on the transactional side is that we have senior lawyers across all our practice groups. So at the moment, we're seeing quite a lot of matters that maybe start as a sanctions related matter, end
Mhm,
up as an M&A matter. Something might be a private wealth matter. Something might be a private capital,
mhm.
could be a real estate matter. And to pinch the words from my new favourite TV show, Amanda Land, we all collab together. So there's just a lot of looking at what each other's doing and seeing how we can all add value. And I think that is just indicative of offshore. I think offshore is not pigeonholed into separate categories that nobody sees, you know, never the train shall meet kind of thing. But I think also in London, we cover Bermuda, we cover BVI, we cover Cayman, and that allows us to just pivot as to whatever the client wants. They don't always come to us and say, I want a BVI company or I've got a Cayman company. It could be any of the,
Mhm, mhm.
you know, three main jurisdictions that we deal with. And we do a lot of work with our disputes guys as well, as you know. And what we do that I think works really well is we don't just talk to disputes lawyers if there is a real court-based dispute.
Yeah, there's an advisory piece to it.
Exactly. They have a different way of thinking about transactions, about the interaction of parties on a matter. You know, as transactional lawyers, we're always trying to get to the same end goal. That's usually what you're trying to do. Whereas disputes lawyers look at it from well, what could happen if it goes wrong or
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
going wrong? You know, it's really useful to bring in, you know, John O'Driscoll or Francesca or
Mm.
any of those guys and just say, you know, how would you approach this? And it's often very different.
I think that's something we get it right, actually flexing both our transactional and our litigation experience. Well, Rachel, thank you very much for taking the time. I know you're spinning a few plates right now, and the London office is really crackling, and that's down to the work that people see, but it's also down to the work that nobody actually sees. So thank you for that. And I look forward to seeing you on series three. We will speak before that, Rachel.
Yeah. Thanks very much, William.
Okay, see ya.